Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Homeopathy Hangout podcast. I'm so excited for today's guest. We have got the lovely Lauren Hubele on the podcast to talk about Gemmos, which I've heard so much about. It keeps popping up everywhere, and I don't know anything about it, and I haven't done much research for today. So I'm going to be learning with our listeners today. So welcome to the show, Lauren.
Oh, thank you, Eugenie. And this is wonderful because my favorite thing to do is teach people about Gemmos.
Well, lucky for both of us then.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you have to tell us, how did you find Gemmos? And yeah, just your
Oh,
background.
yeah. Well, it's quite a story, actually, Eugenie, because I was actually prescribed Gemmos when I was pregnant with my son, who's now 23 years old. So, spoiler alert, he was just fine through this. But I was diagnosed with melanoma cancer. And I worked to restore my immune system after surgery with a naturopath, homeopath, actual medical doctor in Heidelberg, Germany. Then I was exposed to him a second time down the road later from a naturopath. And at this time, Eugenie, that really totally was not on my radar that I would ever work with healthcare or be in that field. I was a high school teacher and I just wanted to live through my kids growing up. I mean, that was where my focus was. And so they really went to the back of the burner, so to speak, until our family moved from Germany to America. And suddenly I found that what I had accumulated in skills with my own health was of great interest to a lot of my neighbors and friends and people we were meeting. And they also were very interested. We had this very healthy son who had never taken medications and had only been using homeopathy since birth. And so I could see, hey, there's something going on here. I might be being called into a practice like many homeopaths, right? There's always those things. And so I began to study with my mentor, and I took many, many, many courses going back and forth to Europe, but I couldn't find anyone that could teach me gemmotherapy at that time. So this is now like 18 years ago, 15, 18 years ago. There really wasn't anything, certainly nothing in English at that time. And so eventually I opened a practice and I felt like there's something missing from this practice. This is really great that folks can have their homeopathy, but there's a partner missing here. And the gemmotherapy idea kept coming back to me. And so, Eugenie, the story goes on is this whole trail of people I met, right? Because that's how it always is, that just give you the next piece. And so there was a homeopath in England that had started an online program, Nick Churchill. He no longer practices. However, he was studying gemmotherapy and began introducing folks to what he was learning. And through him, I met a doctor in Romania, Dr. Serena Suescu, who ran a clinic in Romania only using homeopathy and gemmotherapy. And it was a family practice clinic. She had several doctors working for her, and people would come from all over the country and wait for hours just to see her. And so I went and spent a good portion of part of my summer studying with her, watching how she worked, learning directly from her. And then it just went from there. It was one thing after another.
Amazing. Now, part of the reason I was so interested to have you on, like I said, I've heard the word Gemmos here and there everywhere. I never know anything about what it is. And then I was having a little Facebook chat with Luke Norland the other day, and it came up in conversation. I was like, okay, that's it. I need to talk to somebody who is the person to talk to. And then he put me in touch with you. And then synchronistically, at the same time, my homeopath prescribed me a gemmotherapy remedy. And I'm like, okay, this is like so synchronistic. I have to find out more about it. But you're going to have to start us with like the basics, like Gemmotherapy 101. What is gemmotherapy?
Yeah, yeah. So it is a full medicine, just like homeopathy is a full medicine or Chinese medicine. And within it, right now, we have about 60 trees and shrubs that Materia Medica has been built on since the late 1950s. And there is active research continuing today. So the exciting thing about it is that it's an emerging medicine, right? But what is it that makes it so different and unique is that we're using fresh plant material. The plant material is put into a maceration within several hours, generally 3 or less. If you're making it yourself, you're putting it in immediately, of course, but the manufacturers of it keep a threshold of 3 hours. And the plant material that's used varies from tree to tree. However, it's the part of the plant that contains the most meristem cells. Is that a term you're familiar with?
No, no. Tell me all about it.
Yeah, so meristem cells are the equivalent in plants just as human stem cells. So they have the capability and the potential of containing all the vital energy of all the parts of the tree. And so when we're working with herbal medicine, we might be working with the leaves or the roots or the bark. In gemmotherapy, we're picking the earliest leaf buds just as they are full and plump before they bring their leaves out. And we're using that fresh part and putting it into a maceration of alcohol, glycerin, and water. Some of the plants we're using rootlets. So we have corn and rye that we're using young roots. We have the oat gemmotherapy where we're actually using the whole shoot of the plant. So there's some variations in there, but for the most part, what we're using is the youngest part of the plant that in the spring, before once the sap begins to rise and before those leaves come out and the photosynthesis begins, they're holding all that plant potential.
Oh, I've heard like a very simplified version even of that. I like how you brought the stem cells in, but when I would ask people, like, what's Gemmos? They say, oh, it's like using the buds or whatever. So I thought maybe that's where it was, but I like how you explained it. That makes a lot of sense. And intuitively, I think it immediately resonates because you're like, yeah, of course it makes sense because that's got all the kind of genetic potential of it in there. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's amazing. So you said there's about 60 of them already, which is pretty cool.
Right, right. There are 60 that there is a solid materia medic on. And most of the research for gemmotherapy is taking place in Italy and in Romania right now. And it's university level research.
Wow.
I work directly with the research director and the department chair of a university in Arad, Romania, and their school of pharmacy focuses directly on gemmotherapy and are right at the cutting edge of discoveries. It's a medicine that I believe we haven't even begun to scratch the surface of its potential.
Mm. How was it discovered? Like, who was the first person to come up with this and where did it come from?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we know who got it codified and into the European pharmacopoeia, and that was Paul Henry. But we know that there are reports of even Egyptians using bud medicine. We know Hildegard of Bingen worked with bud medicine. In fact, was working with your favorite already, Eugenie Blackcurrant. And so there were notes among her work. But the story, as I understand it from Belgium, is that Paul Henry, a research doctor and a homeopath in his own right, was researching with a team and they were trying to interrupt the process of disease in the bloodstream with plants. And with using the different parts of plant material, they were unable to reach complete success. But when they went to the buds of the plants, they found the results that they were looking for. And so in his lifetime, I think he may have documented 20, 25 extracts. And what they were looking towards is plants or trees and shrubs that were already widely known for their medicinal qualities. So some of those first ones are the birch trees and oak and maple and hazel and walnut. So they were trees that were very well known over centuries for their medicinal benefits. However, now that it's getting some worldwide recognition, we're going to begin to need to look at what are the trees and shrubs that grow in our
Mm.
areas. right? And how can they best serve the people that live in those areas?
I really resonate with using the medicines from your land. There was one of the ladies I had on the podcast, Barbara, in Swaziland in South Africa. And, well, Swaziland's its own country in Southern Africa, but just teaching them how to use homeopathic remedies made from the native plants in their own land. I think that's so powerful. So you said about getting the buds and then you're like macerating them with the alcohol and the glycerin and everything else. So is this mother tinctures? This is not like potentized stuff.
Yeah, so it depends what country you're coming from, whether we're calling it potentized or not, what the definition is. But the maceration is made. And so what you have is a concentrate or a mother tincture. And in some countries, that is the tincture that's worked with directly there. But in many countries, and what I've been working with my whole practice is what we call a D1 version of that. And so it's been diluted 1 part to 9 parts of water. And the reason I've been attracted to the D1 use of gemmotherapy is it's much easier to control the dosage. And most of my work in the beginning was around working with young children and babies. And so being able to take that down to a lower level. And then depending on the company or the boutique producer, whether the remedies are successed or not, that's really, some do and some don't. But the beauty of it and is that it can be made on your kitchen table. That's what I am most thrilled about this medicine is we're moving into this new age, right? Where we want to see people being empowered and taking their health into their own hands and health sovereignty. And we can actually grow most of these plants right in our own gardens. And the process is, it doesn't require any equipment other than a marmalade jar and these solvents that I mentioned, and 3 weeks to process them.
That is very exciting because I mentioned to you before we started recording that my homeopath just prescribed me blackcurrant for my adrenals, which is probably no surprise. But she wanted me to take it in the mother tincture or I can't remember what the concentrate.
The
But
concentrate.
yeah, the supplier is sold out, and it's a small supplier in Tasmania, and they said that goes out the door almost the second it goes in, so you can hardly ever get it from them. And so I bought the 1D, and not knowing what it is or what it means even. So that's really wonderful knowing that you can actually empower yourself by making these yourself, which is
Oh,
amazing. And so you could just get the 1D. Do you get like a 2D and a 3D, or does it just tend to be the
no,
1D? And
I
then there's
mean, I'm sure there's someone out there that might be experimenting with that, but for what I know right now and what we're basing our materia medicas on is the concentrator, the D1.
like my homeopath prescribed 20 drops of the 1D blackcurrant for me. Like, is that a dosage that you would then adjust? Is that what you're saying about working with children? You can adjust the dosage depending on
Yeah, of
the
course you can
age?
adjust it. And there's lots of schools of thought, and I have a very strong opinion about lower doses. I began in my training, learning, oh, we need 50 drops of this or then 25. But in the community of practitioners that I've worked with for the last 10 years, we've really discovered that less is more, not in the terms like a homeopathic dose of it, but anywhere from 6 to 12 drops if we're looking for a physical response. But then I've worked out a way of microdosing a number of the extracts, 26 of them, that actually work on the central and autonomic nervous system. And so by just taking 1 or 2 drops, your blackcurrant is one of them, you would actually be working with the subtle body then and directly with the nervous system.
That is cool. How did you discover that? Like, what made you try
Yeah,
to think to test
yeah.
that
Well,
out?
well, I mean, all my work from the very beginning has been taking what I learned and synthesizing it so I could teach it to other people. And that was the process. And so when I was learning gemmotherapy, things weren't, you had a book on all the different extracts, right, and what they do, but then you have a human in front of you, and which one comes first, and how do I know, right? And so there is a very allopathic method of working with gemmotherapy. It has mostly been used by allopathic doctors in Europe. And I was looking for another way of working with it more holistically. I had a really wonderful full practice of people willing to experiment with me and looking at some different ways of dosing it. So, first, I began isolating extracts that worked best with elimination, and we built a whole system around that. And when I'm saying we, I worked over time with a couple hundred practitioners that I had been training, and they helped create a feedback loop for me. And I could have never done this on my own, but through seminars and gatherings that we would have, I was getting very good information back and affirming. And then at the same time, I would be checking in with my colleague in Romania at the School of Pharmacy and say, does this match up? And what you're discovering. So what I've ended up calling this is the art and science of gemmotherapy, right? So I haven't yet told you about the nervous system, but let me get there. So we worked with the Gemmos for the elimination systems for a long time. And I kept feeling that there was something missing, just like I did when I was only working with homeopathy. And the nervous system kept coming through to me. And gosh, this was probably now 9 years ago. And at that same time, there was really cool research coming out on the nervous system, on trauma, on the polyvagal theory. And so I began looking at what are we doing? What kind of frameworks are out there for working with the nervous system, for working with trauma and the emotional states? And the place that I really found the answers that spoke to me was the polyvagal theory. And so looking at Dr. Stephen Porges's work and what Deb Dana has done. And I was fortunate enough to have a dear friend, Cameron Scott, who worked directly with the two of them, kind of help me start looking at these gemmos through those lenses of what the autonomic nervous system response is and the state is. So we isolated the extracts through the materia medica of which ones had effects on the autonomic nervous system, which ones had effects on the central nervous system, and then through what I called Gemmo labs. And we, just like homeopathic provings, we would have practitioners come through and we would be testing a set of 5. And what we found was the lower the dose, the more effect we had on the nervous system. And I didn't set out to find that, I that actually wasn't even on my radar, but we would find that folks were aggravating on the higher dose because it was activating these other organ systems. But if we brought it way down to just 1 drop, 2 drops, we were just getting this beautiful subtle body effect.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. And also from a sustainability point of view, that's why I always love homeopathy because it's energy medicine. And so when I, got this email back from the person saying, "Oh no, it's all sold out and that's it," I'm like, "Oh, but, I'm so used to things not running out with homeopathy." And then it kind of brought that up thinking, "Oh, well, what plants are they using and are they, is it a sustainable way of doing it?" So I like what you're saying. If we can reduce that dose even more, it's kind of going more with Hahnemann's way of thinking, like the gentlest, the least amount, the least impact on the planet. I like where you're going with that. That's great.
Well, Eugenie, to take that sustainability even further, I think this is really important, is picking the buds actually improves the health of the plant. This
Right.
is really something to start wrapping our brains around, and it fits very well with permaculture and regenerative farming ideas. So let's take your blackcurrant, for instance. On a blackcurrant plant, early in the spring, it sends up from its stalk a tip with maybe 5, 6, 8 buds on it. If we want that plant to fruit in its best possible way, we're actually going to snip that off, whether we want to make gemmotherapy or not, if we're just a farmer. But we've snipped it off. I happen to know how to make gemmos. I can pluck those buds off, pop them in my macerate, and I have a little stalk. I can make a new black currant plant. So I've improved the quality and the amount of fruit on the original plant, made a medicine, and created a new plant. That's what real sustainability is.
That sounds like a win-win-win. I like those. Can you mix the Gemmos as well? Like, would you ever create like a combination remedy for a client?
Oh,
Oh, you
absolutely.
can.
So in some of the companies that make Gemmos, they produce what's called polygemmos and combinations where they've learned that the synergy of certain Gemmos together will bring a certain effect. And I think those are wonderful. They've been made to kind of go out the door easily to someone that doesn't understand how to work with the system. My challenge with them is if I gave you a combination with three Gemmos in and you had an aggravation, we're not going to know which of the three was causing the issue. And so I'm a real big fan of working with the individual extracts and adding them bit by bit. In my experience with working with extracts, and we're trying to create a protocol, people can take information into the body from about 5 extracts a day. So that can go up to 7 if they're in an acute situation and we're dealing with some really degenerative issues. But 5 feels to me like a good number in my own experience, as well as taking them. And if you think about each one of those drops as information going into the body, we have to think, how much information can we take in at a time? And we all have our threshold, and then our ability to digest that information decreases, right? The more we add.
Mm.
So working with that number and maybe taking some in the morning, some midday, and some in the evening.
Amazing. And do you tend to prescribe it more for physicals or like mental emotionals as well? And how do you use your homeopathics alongside? Like if say somebody came in with bulimia or like some sort of mental emotional depression or whatever, would you give a homeopathic for that and then the Gemmo to treat like the nervous system and the vital organs, or how would you work that?
Yeah, well, now you're talking the art of gemmotherapy, right? So there's a lot of different ways we could approach that, but let's just talk about the action on the body for each of those. So we know homeopathy supports the vital force, right? And when I'm thinking of a remedy and I imagine the body, I'm imagining it pushing up what is blocking the ability to heal, and sometimes that pushing up causes aggravations, right? We see things like on the skin or a lot of mucus or that type of thing. And then it moves on and does its work. Well, a gemmotherapy extract acts differently. It's a drainage extract. So it's helping the body do a couple things at once. One, reminding the organ and organ systems how they were meant to perform naturally. So it's not pushing anything that wasn't already in the program for that organ. And then they're helping remind it to clean and rejuvenate the tissues. So it's working on a physical cellular level. So we've got the vital force energy coming in from homeopathy. And at the same time, we've got this action from the gemmotherapy. So what homeopaths will say right off is if they're working with remedies, homeopathic remedies and gemmos together, they rarely get aggravations from the homeopathic remedies.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I think that's what my homeopath was trying to do with me because she's given me some remedies in higher potency and then she's given me these things to support my adrenals. So
Sure.
that's beautiful. So would you use it like acutely as well, or was it only ever like as
Yeah.
a drainage or
Yeah.
like to support the organs? Because I'm just trying to figure out where like how exactly I would fit that into my practice. Is it more like an
Yeah.
organotherapy type thing where I would, or can I use it acutely as well?
So it's all, right? That's the beauty of it. So folks come in from different approaches. So it could be, I'm just going to bring them into my practice to use acutely, and I'm going to teach moms how to have them at home and put them to work right away. And it certainly helps the acute needs and calls on homeopaths to, help with colds and flus right off. So it has very, very good responses on acute colds, flus, and viruses. We learned a lot during the COVID years and found that gemmotherapy kept hundreds of folks out of the hospital because of its ability to support the lungs. And so that's one way we can look at. We can look at the 26 extracts that support the nervous system. And because, as you know, we can't heal if our nervous system is operating in a sympathetic state. You could try every type of medicine and therapy, but if we're always operating in a sympathetic state and the stress hormones are flowing in our body, the body cannot heal. And so we have to bring our system down to a state of safety to be able to respond to remedies, to acupuncture, to even pharmaceutical medications. And that's what's so beautiful about gemmotherapy, because it is helping bring someone down out of crisis, support their ability to gain some clarity, and build resiliency in their nervous system so that the next time, the next thing that happens, they will be able to get their footing easier and come back to a state of harmony. What we've watched over the last 7 years in working with Gemmos with the nervous system is it's really astounding what's possible. And someone could make that their entire practice if you're just supporting folks to feel safe in their body and safe in the world.
Oh my gosh. And in the aftermath of COVID, I don't think anyone feels safe anywhere. So that sounds like you could make a pretty good practice just out of making people
Yeah.
feel safe in their bodies.
Yeah.
And you're just saying that. I'm just thinking of the amount of people that they might not necessarily use those words, but you can tell that they're not safe in their body. I just think of all the birth trauma that I've dealt with, where women literally just will say that they felt that they've left their bodies, and you can see they've never just come back. All the frights or the shocks or the accidents or all the things that we saw around us, during COVID, it was just too much to deal with. So it's easier just to kind of like check out for a bit and then forget to come back. So that sounds amazing.
Well, and I think, having worked with homeopathy in my practice is you can chase a remedy for forever trying to get to that. But if we can help offer support in that first session with some Gemmos, and then we start seeing some safety come online, and then our conversations start changing too. And what you may have thought may have been a remedy before, you may have a different perspective once they start presenting in a way that's more in alignment with who they really are, and not all that state of protection that is coming in first.
Mhm. You just made me think of a client that this was from a few years back, but we're still in touch. And I gave her so many remedies, and they just, well indicated remedy, and they just wouldn't do the trick. And then
Yes.
I thought, okay, there's something that the vital force is just not responding to this remedy. So I did like serenum and like mega potency because, Hilary Dorian was saying one. Sometimes the vital force is too weak to respond. So you give serenum, it gets underneath, it lifts it, and then it can work. Gave that, nothing. I gave camphor high, nothing. I gave opium high, nothing. I'm trying to think of all these remedies I was giving her in mega potencies just to get her to have some sort of reaction. But there was a big history of severe dental trauma. Like her jaw was very narrow. And so lots of like breaking her jaw, refixing it, So I thought maybe it's structural. She's had lots of cranial, sacral. I'm like, what? And she uses remedies acutely and has great results. She loves homeopathy, but for some reason, we just cannot get that remedy to really shift things for her. And when you said that about not feeling safe in the body, that really made a lot of sense. I'm going to have to go back to this case now and see maybe it is just a matter of not feeling safe in the body. And so it doesn't matter what remedies you give, the body's going to go, nah.
Eugene, I think there are many more cases like that. And it's a continuum, right? She
Mm.
sounds very extreme, but there are folks that I think all of us carry that. And it depends what kind of events we've faced just in recent time. And we can see that lack of safety very much like we can see inflammation in the body, right? It's emotional inflammation. And there's a point where it doesn't matter what modality we're offering, we're not going to shift things until we can help support that person on their own to come back to feeling safe.
And when you're saying this about the feeling safe, this is specifically these 26 remedies that you've done the
Mhm.
microdosing specifically for the nervous system on. That's amazing. Now, I just want to like double check because even I'm getting heart palpitations going, oh my gosh, this time's going so quickly. I want to know so much. But you have got courses for this and you have a book coming out and all of these things. So people that are sitting here listening like me going, I need to know this stuff. It's so good. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Just about
Yeah,
courses and books and
yeah.
how we can learn more?
Sure, sure. The first thing that folks can do right away is I do run a YouTube channel. It's called the Coherence Lab. I've just recently moved my work from there. I worked for a number of years with a closed network on Mighty Network teaching on there. But I wanted to get my work at this chapter in my life. I'm 65. I'm not getting any younger. And I want that out there and accessible to folks. So it's called the Coherence Lab. There's a playlist called Gemmo Voices where I'm interviewing different practitioners I've worked with, and just a good way to just kind of immerse yourself in how people are using them and what they are like. And then I have a program that happens every quarter right now that I'm working with a human design coach and a
Ooh.
developmental learning coach. And what we're doing is we're looking at human design and the nervous system and this whole idea of how do we feel safe in the world using coaching practices, using our design and our astrology, and then the gemmos for the nervous system. So that's really where my work is these days, because I believe if I love all the gemmos and I love all the things that they can do for the physical body, but honestly, if we can't feel safe, we're not going to solve any of the other chronic challenges we have. So those are courses to dip into. But then I have my book, Eugenie, and I'm really thrilled about this. This is a book that really, to truth be told, I've been carrying it since I first learned about Gemmos, and I put out some small books right away just to get my thoughts out, but they feel very outdated in where I've gone with my thinking. And so this is the art and science of gemmotherapy. It is complete materia medica with information from both perspectives, from here's the actions of these extracts and this is what we know, and from science, but also from a more esoteric view of looking at the oracle reading for each of these extracts, looking at how you can really use it in your practice, what kind of people, or how you'd use it in your family. When are the times you should think about dog rose or walnut or black poplar? And so that book you can find on our Gemmo store. I think we can put the links in your show
Show notes.
notes,
Yeah.
and it probably by the time we're airing, the pre-order will be up, and I'm hoping it'll be available for folks in early summer.
That'll be amazing. Congratulations. I'm sure it took a lot of blood, sweat,
Yes.
and tears to get that out. I hope we can
Yeah,
get your book here in Australia as well. And if there's any sort of trouble getting it here, I'd love to stock it because it sounds like
absolutely.
it's
We'll
very
make sure that
worthwhile.
happens.
And then you've got a step further because you've got this magical like forest of gemmos that you and your family work on. Can you just tell? Because I read your story and your children come and your granddaughter and you're there in the forest picking, and I'm like, it just sounds like this is a scene out of I don't know, like what's that musical thing in the hills, Sound of Music or
The
something like
sound
that.
of
I can imagine you la 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 like picking gemmos in the forest.
that might not be the exact picture.
That's what it's like in my head. But tell us about that. You're growing it yourself and making it yourself. That's amazing.
Yeah, well, let me just clear up the picture just a little bit. So we own an acre here. We moved half of my family from Austin, Texas to New Hampshire so that we could do two things, that I could start my nonprofit, the Gemmo Forest, and that our family could grow our own food. And so we have 7,000 square feet in food, vegetable beds, and fruit and orchards. And then we have this Gemmo Forest. And the Gemmo Forest really is it's a nonprofit. I have a board of directors that really own and run the forest. I'm the visionary. I serve as president and farm manager at the moment. But, this is all designed with that this is going to be something for generations to come. But here's the cool thing, Eugene. This is a project that is meant to be duplicated. And our idea is to inspire other communities to create a garden in such a way where people can come and learn how to grow their own food, how to make their own medicine, how to do it using permaculture and regenerative farming principles. And we offer opportunities every week during the growing season for folks to just come get their hands in the soil. So sometimes we have young women who just work jobs in front of laptops that never would have that experience, but come out and volunteer for a couple hours. We work with a lot of community organizations and colleges. So we have interns involved in our process. And originally I thought, oh, we're going to grow and produce our own Gemmos. But what the land has taught me and what this experience has taught me is, oh, this is about empowering people to do it themselves. And we just give them the example. And so we host events and teach those processes.
Oh, it sounds amazing. Sounds like a good excuse to make a trip out to. Did you say New
Oh,
Hampshire?
you are so
Okay.
welcome to come.
Oh, that'd be amazing. And can you tell us maybe a little bit more about just give us like a bit of an overview of some of the Gemmos that they are, and or maybe if it's easier, just like, so we've still got about 10, 15 minutes left. So yeah, just like a bit of an overview of the Gemmos and some of the things that they can treat.
Yeah. You know what we're going to do? Let's talk about the extracts that you would consider if you were just starting. Okay. If
Beautiful.
you,
Yes.
and whether you're a practitioner or whether you're a mom and you want to begin working with them, everyone needs support for their central nervous system. Everyone. And so in this work, we've isolated 6 that are very useful in the fact that they don't cause any aggravations. They help settle the central nervous system in its ability to receive sensory information in a safe way. So I could go down a whole path and talk a little bit about the nervous system and how we are programmed over our life to respond in a protected state or a safe state. But let's just talk about the Gemmos for a second. And let me tell you a little bit about each one. Okay. So the first one I would share is Black Poplar. Black Poplar is one to consider when the primary state is fear. And fear can look something like something very different on you and me. But fear will always shrink our world because what we begin to do is we begin to try to control. So the coping mechanism that we see in folks where fear is running their world is they control. And we can see that in ourselves and we can see that in others. And, just take an overpacked day that you have. The first thing you start doing is trying to control everyone around us, right? So I can do all the things I need to do. And that's a rather humorous approach, but it can be also on the other end that I start living my life in a really small way. And we saw that, Eugenie, all during the lockdowns and and everyone's world got very, very small. And just an interesting note about this tree, Black Poplar, it has leaves that shake in the wind. So it's related to the aspen tree, to quaking aspen. Black Poplar is the other. And so it's literally quivering in its fear. So that's its signature for us to recognize. So that's a great first extract because I think everybody operates at some level, right, with a state of fear. And that can be just taken in 1 to 2 drops each morning before your day gets going.
That is really profound. And I always love it when people relate it back to the plant. And like we'll forever have this image in our head now of like the quivering leaves and the fear. That is really powerful. And I love that you say just one or two drops. And so you're saying like you can use that like ongoing, you're not going to have an aggravation. And just when you notice that actually you're not responding from that place of fear anymore, then you would just stop it. So it might be like a month or 6 months or a year or 2 years, or how long would you give something like that?
Or it might be a couple weeks. And it's about creating awareness in ourselves, and our state changes. So you'll need a different one for sure. But it's a matter of, and that's so much of my teaching, is helping folks begin to start reading their own body on these signs. So let me share another one that is really loved in among the practitioners is dog rose. And this is the briar rose, the wild rose that we have. And in taken, if we look at it from a microdose, 1 or 2 drops, this extract is amazing for that state of fragility where we are like that cracked window that hasn't collapsed yet. And we're just holding it all together. And we all have periods of time where one more thing will make us crack. And in that state, we also tend to cling to someone else in our world. And that relationship can border on becoming unhealthy, can become a codependent relationship, or this could just be for a short period. Sometimes that clinging is to a practitioner, because I can only make it if I won't fall apart as long as this person is there in my life or keeps me together. And so a good image for you for this one, when we look at the wild rose plant, the rose is gorgeous. It's only one layer of petals. They're this beautiful pale pink, but if we were to touch it with a finger, all the petals fall and the whole flower falls apart. So this is also true for individuals in that state, is if I get too close, they might fall apart. And there you go. You got
Yeah,
it.
it's got that
Thank
up on
you,
the stilts.
Eugenie. That's beautiful. That is such a perfect picture of it. And so it's gorgeous and you want to touch it, right? And you're drawn to it. But if you pick that, it would completely collapse. And that's that fragile state that Dog Rose does such beautiful work on. And I think Dog Rose and Black Poplar both work very quickly. So sometimes folks don't need it for that long, but it depends. Are we talking, is this a state you've been in for months and months? Or did it just happen because you've lost a dear friend, or you've changed jobs, or, is it very short term?
Holy moly. I have a client with a teenage daughter who has been homeschooled her whole life. The mum cannot even go and have a coffee with a friend because this daughter literally is clinging to her the entire day. And it sounds like an amazing remedy.
Yeah.
Definitely. Or
Yeah, and
an
it's
amazing
so
Gemmo.
simple.
Mm. And actually, just even that image of it is the fragility of it all is, yeah, it's just matches beautifully. You can just feel the energy of it. I'm excited to try that. Any others you want to share with us?
Yeah, what do you think? Do we have time for one more?
Yeah, we have. I mean, I can keep going until you've run out of things that you want to share. One thing I just want to say is that isn't it beautiful where life takes us? Because your teaching background obviously has helped you be able to
Sure.
deliver information very concisely and very clearly. You're so excellent at it. I'm just sitting here like completely enthralled in the way that you're
Oh,
delivering the
wonderful.
information. So it's beautiful. I love it.
Yeah, and I have to say, it's a little more rewarding than teaching high school.
I can imagine. Imagine.
But I also got really used to teaching when people were interested. So when I see someone light up, it lights me up as well. So thank you for responding so eloquently there.
Oh.
So let's talk about walnut, because this also could be one that I think you'll think of a client right away. So the state that walnut addresses is that state of shielding, and that we need to protect ourselves and have something between us and whatever is making us feel threatened. And the coping mechanism for walnut is isolation.
Mm.
So this was a remedy that we used often during the COVID years. because of that fear, right? It was a different kind of fear than Black Poplar. It was, I just need to isolate myself. And Walnut, the state of Walnut, I feel safe as long as I'm home, as long as I'm in my own environment. And, I don't know about you, Eugenie, but there's been times in my life where things have happened where I felt very vulnerable and I didn't really feel like being out with people. And being home was the place that I was fine. I felt safe there. And this remedy has come in so useful. The walnut tree grows alone. It doesn't let other plants grow under it. And if we're looking at it out in the countryside, you often see this magnificent, strong tree, which these individuals are, but they want to be separate and isolated. And there's also a sense that if I'm not, I'll lose my sovereignty, I'll lose my sense of self. So there is this real shielding to that state.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I can definitely think of a few cases that would be grateful. I just had a thought when you mentioned about the black poplar and how, the fear and having to control things because of that. It made me think of my children in clinic with autism because everything is so controlled. Everything has to be done a certain way. You can't deviate from the way that things are done. And it's just kind of made me wonder about how much of that is actually fear driven and if you've ever used black poplar for cases of autism.
Oh, yeah. This could open up a whole topic, but I don't know if you followed any of the studies that are linking that same kind of, they're seeing some of these similar responses in folks with Parkinson's disease, and that there's an American acupuncturist that has discovered that it's really trauma, that old trauma that's surfacing that's causing the
I would
shakes.
100% believe that.
Right. And so we have found black poplar to be extremely useful in Parkinson's cases. And we also have found it very useful in children with autism.
Because that would be so amazing. I mean, homeopathy is incredible for children with autism, but sometimes I do get the feeling it's not enough. And, I do talk to clients about, Wi-Fi and EMFs and diet and importance of sleep and all that sort of stuff, because often these kiddies don't have good diets and they are addicted to technology. And so it makes it really hard to treat. So anything else that I can give in addition to kind of help would be, yeah, really helpful. I'm going to be looking at that. And that is like the next question that I want to ask you is how do we get hold of them? So about, I think 60% of our listenership is in America, and it sounds like they can get it from you. But here in Australia, it's definitely harder. I've had a really hard time trying to find the remedies over here. So sorry, I call them remedies. What do you just call them? Gemmos?
Gemmos, yeah.
Gemmos.
You
So
probably
where,
mean to distinguish between homeopathic remedies and gemmos.
yeah.
So
And then, like with the Gemmos, would you, like in Europe, it sounds like it's easy enough to get, or maybe just run us through for our listeners, where would they get Gemmos?
yeah, so in Europe, there in several countries in Europe, particularly Italy and in France, you can buy them right at the pharmacy.
Wow.
So there's really no trouble with that. I have a number of small batch producers that I can also connect folks with in Europe. We have a producer for my label in Romania, and it's the company we've worked with now for a dozen years. So as I mentioned to you, maybe we just need to figure out how to
Get it to
support
Australia. I
you
think we definitely
importing
need to do that.
into Australia. There is Marlene Herbs in Tasmania, and they're more used to selling, I believe, on a wholesale level than they are to individuals. They're not quite set up for that. So that has been a challenge. And in the UK, I've got, again, my producers on the continent can ship, but I also know a boutique producer in the UK. So, that I think that is the challenge, but I also think that's the beauty of it, Eugenie, because when we have a challenge, we're faced to look at things differently and we start looking for creative solutions. And my answer is we need to start growing these and raising them in our backyard, and we need to discover what are the plants in Australia that might be closely related to these. And that's my work with the Gemmo Forest, is to inspire Gemmo gardens and folks' backyards.
Oh, wow. And have you got all of this in your book? Can you give us like a bit of a rundown, or have you got like a author's copy of the book there that you can show us?
Oh, I wish I
Oh, did you?
did.
Okay. Or do you, like, apart from the Materia Medica, is there anything in there about growing your own forest, or is that going to be a different book?
Yeah, no,
Was
that's
that
going
in
to
the
be the next
course?
book, Eugenie. That
Okay.
absolutely is the next book. I mean, there are about 5 pages on each extract going through it. So it's quite extensive on that line. And then some charts to help folks, whether they want to come in looking at it through an acute lens or a symptomatic lens. But the bulk of it really is the my stories about each extract. And I imagine there's going to be a few books after that, but I was trying to get that big chunk delivered and move that out in the world, and then we'll see what's needed to fill in the gaps.
Oh, amazing. Where can people get hold of you and your work and learn more about you?
Yeah, so I have a lovely out of date website at laurenhubele.com. And you can also look up the Gemmo Forest. There's a Gemmo Forest website, gemmoforest.com. People can email me directly. And then we have a Gemmo store. It's gemmostore.com that the book will be available for pre-order. The book will also be available on all the Amazon distributors and in Australia as well, Eugenie, although I want to make sure you get some copies directly there.
That'll be amazing. And I was just going to say with your YouTube channel as well, you can set it up so that it automatically sends your episodes to Rumble as well, which is a good backup because what happened with me in June last year is YouTube deleted all 300 plus of my videos for what they call medical misinformation. And that's because we talked about injections. And yeah, so the whole channel just gone overnight and I tried to appeal it and they haven't got back. So I was just going to say with your Gemmo YouTube channel, just make sure you put it on Rumble as well. Because
Okay.
that was a very
Thank you.
expensive. And at the moment, I am in Instagram jail for 3 days for talking about homeopathy.
Oh, yeah,
It's
that's
just
happened too
so
many times to
frustrating
me.
trying to get this information out there. It's really, really, I'm so over it.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. I finally gave up. I've been in Instagram jail as well. And, that's just not where I want to be spending my time.
Yes. But then also,
This is
it's such
how
a
we
good way
need to
to
be
reach people.
spending.
Yeah, yeah. I actually recently found out about a homeopath whose podcast got deleted on from Spotify as well, which I thought Spotify was pretty good. So I don't know. It's just hard. It's so unfair. But I hope that things are changing. It feels like things are changing with everything that's happening in America at the moment. I feel that there's a wind of change, and hopefully, more of this information can get access easier and not get suppressed so much because we're a bit over that. Lauren, it was lovely chatting with you. I am so excited to start taking my Gemmo. I can't wait. I'm going to go message my homeopath now and say, is it okay if I microdose it and make my bottle last longer? Because it was a bit of a mission getting hold of it. But thank you so much for this information. I cannot wait for your book to come out. And it's definitely something I'm going to be playing with in clinic. And I definitely want to sign up for your course. I'd love to learn more about it.
Beautiful. Eugenie, thank you so much for inviting me on.
Such a pleasure. I'll catch up with you very soon.